When it comes to video games, there is very rarely such a thing as a blank slate protagonist. As far as there's gameplay, your character exercises a skill set, and as far as the gameplay is distinctive, your character exercises those skills uniquely. A good deal can be said about a character simply based on their styles of practicing the things they're good at. This is firmly rooted in the idea that proficiency and mastery build character, which is as true in fiction as it is in real life. In my last video, I set up a framework for understanding skillfulness as it relates to personality and laid out 12 major archetypes. In this video, I'm going to apply those concepts to various protagonists across video game genres. So if you've already seen the other video, this one will make more sense. Let's begin by talking about a character that perhaps has more personality than you might think. Byleth from Fire Emblem Three Houses. In Three Houses, like other Fire Emblem games, you're leading an army to victory. In addition, and unlike most previous games in the series, you're also a professor educating your squad, and practicing diplomacy with other two houses. Games like this that have multiple interactive systems are ideal targets for applying this skill type framework, since they naturally have multiple domains of knowledge and skill. When it comes to the domain of professorship, Byleth is an improviser with no formal training, cast suddenly into the role. For battle tactics, he fits the Farseer archetype, with his ability to turn back time and explore the tree of branching combat choices more freely than most other protagonists in this franchise. He's also a tactician of diplomacy, who recruits members of other houses by leveling up his own stats according to what those characters look for in a leader. We can discover Byleth's personality by looking at these three facets individually and how they interact with each other. As an improviser of professorship unbound by method, Byleth is the kind of teacher who meets his pupils' individual needs. For example, if you choose the Black Eagles, you'll be perceived as an easygoing teacher by Lindhart, while known by Casper as one that's always pushing the class to excel. Byleth more generally has the trait of social flexibility, able to adapt himself to the person he's talking to. Independently of his style of professorship, Byleth gains combat wisdom as a farseer of battle tactics. Meanwhile, as a tactician of diplomacy, he possesses social analysis in figuring out what qualities would earn other characters' respect, and self-restraint in order to develop those qualities in himself over time. It's worth noting that the self-restraint is shared between the player and the character Byleth, while the social analysis in this moment is not. Whereas you have to actually practice placing other people's desires above your own to be successful at diplomacy, the bits of social analysis that Byleth deduces when it comes to recruiting other members are simply given. You could have to do the deduction yourself, just as you do in Return of the Obra Dinn, and then the personality trait would be shared between Byleth and the player, at least as long as the player is engaged in the magic of the game. So, putting it all together, we have Byleth as a level-headed adapter and a reliable yet unpredictable leader. Next, let's look at some source material for Three Houses, the Persona games. This is a franchise that knows who its main characters are and how to highlight their subtlety. Joker from Persona 5 and Makoto from Persona 3 are two great examples of characters with compelling headspaces that I want to step into as a player. Starting with Persona 5, Joker is an enthusiast of trickery and a natural in the realm of sociological victimhood. The former facet is an example of how skill types can be implied by the narrative of a game and don't have to come directly from a mechanical system within it. We get the message through dialogue, in-game objects like books, as well as the mechanics of crafting infiltration tools that Joker has a knack for deception. Since he has a sustained interest in learning anything and everything about trickery, he fits the enthusiast type. The latter facet comes from the confidants. The people Joker surrounds himself with are all victims of society in one way or another. Joker himself relates to these people naturally as he faces a similar misfortune at the start of the game. As for the personality traits we find present, Joker is a gadget monkey with the tools he jerry-rigs. He's got thorough cunning as seen in his relationship with Akechi that I won't spoil. He's a publicity stuntman, stealing hearts of high-profile targets in order to earn a good reputation for the Phantom Thieves. He's got rebellious willpower to fight against the forces of society that oppress him and his friends. He has a passionate kindness to help those in need that comes from a deep-rooted sympathy. In sum total, we can call him a dark angel, a confrontational illusionist, and someone with extreme psychological perseverance. Working backward to Persona 3, I'll be referring to this game's protagonist as Makoto, his name from the movie, rather than Minato from the manga, because I wish to talk about how the movie adaptation presents the character in light of traits derived from his skills. After all, giving lines to a character in concord with personality that arises from gameplay is a major motivation for the development of the framework. Makoto is a delver of human tragedy. Many of the individuals he surrounds himself with in his daily life have something tragic about them, and Makoto's willingness to delve into these experiences bless him with emotional subtlety, quiet urgency, and fearlessness. Furthermore, he's a harmonist of interpersonal relationships, striving to strengthen his social links by tuning his actions and speech to the frequency of his friends' hearts. Unlike Joker, whose rebel mentality leaves him in opposition to society at large, Makoto empathizes deeply with all strokes of people, even a humanoid robot. It's this quality of Orpheus, whose lyre attracted the attention of every kind of living creature, that makes him a harmonist. Personality traits that stem from this facet include social stability and being in touch with his feminine side. All the things mentioned so far combine to form special personality traits like mysterious charm, intimacy, and permission into the hidden parts of the soul. The movie adaptation for Persona 3 captures several of these qualities, especially the quiet urgency, which becomes a very clear character arc. Fearlessness is portrayed to a more profound degree than a typical shonen hero. A clear effort can also be seen to highlight his emotional subtlety. Other qualities are eschewed or outright inverted in the movie adaptation. Due to the lack of social links in the movie, Makoto is portrayed as completely introverted, socially awkward, and not much of a charmer. But that would be impossible if he were shown to have as active a social life as he maintains throughout the video game. This comparatively negative portrayal comes down to a lack of skills which the character had ample time to demonstrate in the course of a video game, but not a movie. Before we move on from Persona 3, I want to point out that as much personality as the game bestows on its protagonist, the player still does interpret and co-create the character to a degree. This can be seen in the fan art, where some artists have given him a soft look that highlights his pretty boy aspects, and others have emphasized his edgier qualities. I don't mean to imply that because video game protagonists are seldom a blank slate, that there's no space left for the player to project into. So far, we've looked at examples where the characters already have well-defined interactions with the social world around them. What if we were to apply this way of thinking to protagonists whose social personality is yet to take shape? We can extend what we know about a character beyond what we observe in their respective games to invent a characterization that fits the gameplay splendidly. This would help us if we ever wanted to give a voice to an otherwise voiceless character, be it through a movie adaptation, in-game cinematics, dialogue choices, and so on. Starting with Mario from Super Mario Odyssey, a character bursting with possibilities. Mario is a spellbound world traveler, off on a wonderful adventure across the globe. He's a phenomenologist of 3D platforming, since his capture mechanic makes his way of interacting with the physical world multifarious and endless. These two facets lead to some personality traits that are already manifested in the game. As a spellbound world traveler, he's naturally curious, cosmopolitan, adventurous, and filled with wonder and serendipity. As a phenomenologist of 3D platforming, he has a well-rounded spatial awareness, physical intuition, and comfort in his own shoes. As both of these combined, overall he lives life in the moment, and he's a happy-go-lucky, jolly good fellow. He's a superb character as it is, and yet there are untapped potentials brewing just below the surface. How would Mario interact with other individuals? What are the inner workings of his mind? What would be his place in society? There's no one answer to any of these questions. There's an array of possibilities that the artist portraying Mario in these settings would choose from. Nonetheless, studying who the character is in terms of skillfulness should enable the artist to find aptly fitting traits and even take the right risks when it comes to their portrayal. In my last video, I explained each of the 12 types of skillfulness and mentioned what kind of traits tend to arise in each. With that in mind, here are some results. As a spellbound world traveler, Mario could be friendly, caring, inspired, a culture maven, filled with wanderlust or cultural awareness. On the other hand, as a phenomenologist of 3D platforming, he could very well be empathetic, playful, flexible, adaptable, or insightful. And all in all, he could be described as a shape-shifting living legend, a social butterfly, a funny foreigner, a charitable person, or a resourceful traveler with contagious happiness. Needless to say, he doesn't need to be all of these things. A mere handful would go a long way to giving him a voice that resonates. Okay, so now that we've learned how to analyze a character based on their skill set and generate possibilities latent within them, let's look at how the same character portrayed differently in different games can imply distinct personalities. We're going to examine none other than Link as he appears in Breath of the Wild and Ocarina of Time. There are some interesting things going on in each of these versions of Link. In Breath of the Wild, he can truly be said to be a holistic practitioner of exploration. Many of his interests, like cooking, rock climbing, and wild horse taming, come organically out of his mission to explore the land of Hyrule. Another important skill is his combat proficiency, and Link from Breath of the Wild is a multifaceted combatant, meaning that his combat proficiency breaks down into sub-skills that fit different skill archetypes. He's a script master of combat defense. We can feel the Dark Souls influence when it comes to the dance with the enemies to avoid being hit. Reading their attacks and mastering this dance is key to defeating strong enemies. He's also an improviser of combat offense, given that the weapons at his disposal are ever-changing. In contrast, Link from Ocarina of Time gets his skill characterizations from domains other than combat and exploration. Since Ocarina of Time was so influential after it came out in 1998, by today's standards, the combat and exploration are rather non-distinguished and generic feeling. We might have said that Ocarina of Time's Link is a delver of exploration with all of his dungeon crawling, although it's nothing compared to the extent that, say, Steve from Minecraft is a delver of exploration. We will certainly say, however, that this Link stands out as a specialist ocarina player, and a farseer of temporal changes. He fits the specialist type with his ocarina playing because he plays the ocarina at certain times for certain reasons, to accomplish specific goals rather than to satisfy any evident intrinsic interest. He's described as a farseer of temporal changes because he goes between a past and future Hyrule and perceives youth and maturity in a mere instant. With these typings established, personality traits present themselves for each of these Links with some overlap present. As a holistic practitioner of exploration, Link from Breath of the Wild is a resourceful chef, wild horse tamer, herbalist, rock climber, survivalist, and trader of natural goods. We may infer that he could be a free-spirited nomad, a travel guide, compassionate toward nature, emotionally healthy, a dependable provider, tender-hearted, and of course, courageous. As a script master of combat defense, he's got a good read on the enemy, and we may presume he's the type of person who's alert, vigilant, and rarely caught off guard. As an improviser of combat offense, he's a weapon connoisseur, and we get the impression that he's versatile, daring, and clever. On the other hand, Link from Ocarina of Time's ocarina specialty makes him an agent of time itself, a master of light and darkness, a horse tamer, Stormcaller, and ever-present spirit of Hyrule. We may imagine him as a reader of omens, charming, resourceful, intuitive, and elusive. As a farseer of temporal changes, he's a knower of fate, with a hyper-awareness of aging, and a hero of time. This could very well give him the qualities of being prophetic, self-aware, respectful, humble, and sage-like. Overall, Link from Ocarina of Time gives the impression of a mysterious savior, or a heroic charmer, an awakened mystic who's wise beyond his years, with vibrant serenity or youthful energy. Breath of the Wild's Link, in comparison, conjures up characterizations such as ingenious adventurer, invulnerable opportunist, mindful traveler, sensitive lover, kind ruler, with heroic vitality, or animated peacefulness. The biggest difference is that where Ocarina of Time's Link is otherworldly, Breath of the Wild's Link is down to earth. The clearest similarity is both Links possess a Zen-like awakened tranquility. All of these descriptions, generated by considering a character's ways of exercising their skills, go a long way to helping us fill out a rich and nuanced character sheet for a character with a well-established skill set. It's important to recognize that not all personality traits need to stem from a person's skills, and any of these characters could certainly be given other traits outside of this framework. Final Fantasy games tend to provide good examples of protagonists with additional personality features. For instance, Tidus from Final Fantasy X has a brashness that may come from being a natural athlete, and in addition, his crush on Yuna, as well as his daddy issues, are important parts of his distinctiveness as a character. Similarly, Cloud from Final Fantasy VII's standoffishness probably has more to do with his psychosocial development than any area of proficiency. Skills may be the single most salient and notable aspect across the board of video game protagonists, which is why I've developed an ornate language for examining them. Yet, they're by no means the only factor of a real-life person's psychology. In many cases, however, the tools I've provided will be more than sufficient to help a writer come up with the personality details they need to start writing a fictional character into existence. Thanks for watching this video. Like, comment, and subscribe for more content. I hope you found it insightful and well played.